right, folks, let's get this hearing underway. My name is Lynn Fiddler. I am the chair of the ZBA, and in front of you, you have the board members for our evening here. This is Tuesday, October 12th, 2021. It is currently 6:32. And I would like to remind the board and the public that tonight is a hybrid participation meeting. We also have Zoom here, but I want to reiterate to the board and to the public that please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless required by law. Tonight's meeting ID number is 810-3353-2174. The passcode is 065728. I'd also like to remind those that are dialing in by phone that in order to be heard, you must dial *6 when the public is requested to speak. And then when you are done, you also need to press *6 to mute yourself. We have a few changes and points of business this evening I'd like to get to in the beginning. We also have Mark Stiles with us on Zoom this evening. However, I don't know if I need to. Mark, can you hear my voice? Typically, if a member is Zooming in, we have to do a roll call. We do have a 5-member quorum this evening, so his vote is not necessary. He may just be listening in, so that's not necessary. We also have town council available for us in the in Zoom as well. Alrighty. So tonight, we have a case 2172A, 17 Seminole Avenue, and the petitioner has requested a continuance for this case. Nancy, I'll read it into the record and then ask for a vote. Is there something else?
Bob says he can't hear anything.
Okay, let's take a second.
They're not hearing anything on Zoom?
Kidding me. Sean.
No way. I may need to take a short recess, but let's see if we can. We're continuing 21-72A, which is 17 Seminole Avenue.
And then we're gonna bounce DJ, right? This is a disaster on a regular basis.
Bob, can you hear us now?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
I can hear you now.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Bob. All righty. I'm sorry? Mark is just listening in. I did attempt to do, he is not a voting member this evening. He is doing other, so, but I attempted. All righty. Just a second. All right, let's try again. So we are going to read 2172A for Kevin McNiff, 17 Seminole Avenue, into the record and then request a continuance. So we have the petitioner is seeking a special permit in accordance with 305-10.12 of the Marshfield Municipal Code to add a 5-foot, 5-inch by 30-foot, 1-story addition, a 12-foot by 33-foot front second floor dormer, and a 4-foot, 5-inch by 34-foot covered porch, and a variance in accordance with 305-10.11 for relief from 305-6.02, Table of Dimensional and Density Regulations, for an additional 6-foot, 6-inch by 30-foot, 1-story addition to create a 12-foot by 30-foot room on the property located at 17 Seminole Avenue, which is further identified on the assessor's maps as being on parcel M090308 and is located in an R3 zoning district. Again, this applicant has requested a continuance. Nancy, what is the date?
October 26th.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to continue case 2172A for 17 Seminole Avenue to October 26th at 6:30. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Feeney. All those in favor?
Aye, Chris Belazos.
Larry Keane, aye.
Lynn Fiddler, aye.
Steve Feeney, aye.
Brian Murphy, aye.
Okay, so we're all set with that, Nancy. We also have in front of us this evening in the column under continued hearings, a case 1981 that has been on our docket for quite some time now, and I am pleased to report to the board that this applicant is now requesting to withdraw. This is case 1981, DJ Sullivan Collision Center for 612 Plain Street. And I believe I have, for the record, I have the email correspondence for that for the date of October 12th, 2021, and it is requested by Adam J. Brodsky, attorney at law. Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to grant that request. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Feeney. All those in favor?
Chris Belazos, aye.
Larry Keane, aye.
Lynn Fiddler, aye.
Steve Feeney, aye.
Brian Murphy, aye.
Alrighty, moving right along.
Yeah.
It's almost 2 years.
So I noticed that on the 26th, we also have 3 hearings in front of us. So we don't have a crazy night thus far, correct, Nancy?
That's fine.
Okay,
It was over, right?
anything else?
The 26th, yeah.
Anything else before we get
There
started?
will not be any more new hearings for the 26th.
Yeah,
So
okay.
we're good in that end.
All right. Alrighty, so this evening, we will stick to the agenda as you have it, and you see it in front of you. So do we have the applicant here for case 2173 for 20 Constitution Road? Hi, come on up front. Welcome. I'm going to read it into the record, and then we'll get started. 2173, Charlotte G. and Vincent J. Trubiani.
Yes.
The petitioners are seeking a special permit in accordance with 305-10.12 of the Marshfield Municipal Code to construct a 22-foot, 10-inch by 10-foot addition at the rear of the dwelling with a second-floor deck above on the property located at 20 Constitution Road, which is further identified on the assessor's maps as being on parcel L1101-01 and is located in an R3 zoning district. So, let's see what we have. So in front of you, you'll see your application for the, we have the deed for this.
Yes.
Thank you. So why don't you explain your project to us?
Yes, right now what we have is a screen room on a deck, and with a 2-story deck. And what we would like to do is increase the size of it to the full size of our deck and make it a year-round room, so it's heated and air conditioned. Right now, you can see from the pictures, the 2 pictures that we have, you can see the existing, and that when we expand it, just a small portion of it is going to be additional interior space, but it will all be heated and air conditioned. Right now, it's just a sunroom. That's the existing floor plan. That's the floor plan of what we're going to,
Your proposed.
what we're proposed, yes. But it's on the existing deck.
Mr. Triviani, can I ask you a question? May I ask the applicant a question, Madam Chair?
Sure.
Are you an engineer? Did you draw these plans?
Yes,
Are you an engineer?
no.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I'll wait to make comment on that.
Andrew, did you get a chance to look at these plans? He's looking at.
The engineer, that's from Stenbeck and Taylor.
The engineer
This plot
drew,
plan is from.
the plot plan is by an
Is that what
engineer.
you meant?
Yeah,
Oh, you
that's-
meant-
Sketch.
that's a plot plan that, could put that down, is that like a,
It's got a stamp on it.
yeah,
This is that's Stenbeck and Taylor's plot plan.
yeah. I don't know, but anyways, yeah, go ahead.
This is the wrong plan.
Mr. Triviani, did you have this done? Yeah, you did, 9/20, so you had this
Yes.
done in contemplation of this thing?
Yes.
But he didn't do the plan, the rest of the plans?
What do you mean?
I mean, he didn't, so Stenbeck and Taylor didn't do these plans? You didn't
No.
have them do these?
No.
plans? You said, this is enough, I don't need these, right?
Yes.
I think you do, but there's difference of opinion on the board, but.
You mean the architecturals?
What's that?
Talking about the architectural?
No, these things.
The architectural plan.
just showing what he's doing.
But it's okay. I just want to make, that's my opinion, but it's definitely different on the board, so, but go ahead.
So is it staying the exact same? The look of it is staying exactly the same? You're
Yes,
just
we have,
turning
I have
it
an
into living
elevation.
space?
I have an elevation, that's the two-end elevations. One is the ocean side and one is the interior side. And then the other elevation here, which would be the new. The difference is, again, there's more wall and less window in the new.
And you're in a flood zone?
Yes. Yes.
Is the house elevated out of the flood zone or no?
Yes, the house was built in 2009. And so it was the first year of the hurricane requirements. It's built with all the hurricane requirements. It has the hurricane windows and all the steel straps and everything to it. And
Right, but
it
as
was
far as
it was
the
built
flood zone,
according to that.
What's the flood zone? What's
The flood zone requirement, according to the building inspector, is that I have to raise the floor to match the existing lowest floor of the building. Whatever his requirement is, we're going to follow. But,
So do you realize Andrew is the building commissioner?
oh,
Welcome! Okay. Just give us a second.
and we meet all the setback requirements that are,
So the rendering must have come after the fact. Did you just receive the rendering, Nancy? Well,
No, it's in the email.
oh, okay. There was a comment from Bob. Planning board's commented or not?
They had no comment.
No comment, thank you. And the shed, will the shed remain?
yes.
Okay, so the board will not endorse that shed, just so you're aware, in this location, present location, if we move forward on granting this application.
Okay. What do you mean by that? Not endorse it?
So you're here for your specific addition?
Yes.
You're not here to ask the board to say that your shed is in the proper location, so we're just,
Correct.
that's just a moot point for us?
Right.
Okay, all right. So this particular project also, the decision would, we're getting ahead of ourselves, request an as-built, obviously.
By the engineer.
Yes, and occupancy permit. So when we get to that. Any further questions from the board?
I have none.
No, thank you.
Okay. Any questions from the public? Yes, ma'am,
Pat,
please
would you
identify.
abutter the 24 Constitution Road?
Would you identify yourself again for the record?
I'm the abutter to the
Okay.
24 Constitution Road. Is the second floor deck going to be enclosed?
If you'd care to answer the,
No? Okay.
No, it's going to look just like it is now.
Right,
Except
but
a
it'll
little
come
bit
all the
larger.
way, well, it'll come all the way to the end.
okay. Any further questions from the public? So since we did bring this up, I have Richard Servant from Stenbeck and Taylor with a date of 9/14/21 on the site plan, referencing the front and side and rear setbacks at 15 in the front, sides 15, rear 30. Locus is in a zone AO 3 foot as shown on the front, on the maps. Okay. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to close this hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Brian Murphy. I'd like to make a motion to grant the special permit in accordance with 305-10.12, acknowledging that the board has reviewed.
Can I just jump in for a second?
Sure.
You just need to vote on the closing.
Oh,
Aye, Chris Pelazos.
thank you.
Larry Keane, aye.
Lynn Fiddler, aye.
Steve Heaney, aye.
Brian Murphy, aye.
Okay, we are now
Thank you.
closed. Any deliberation?
No, thank you.
I'm good.
So we have, as a condition, we have the as-built required and the occupancy permit required, and we are not endorsing the shed. Anything else, folks? No? Okay. Again, I'd like to make a motion to grant the special permit with those conditions. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Brian Murphy. All those in favor?
Chris Pelazos, aye.
Larry Keane, aye.
Lynn Fiddler, aye.
Steve Heaney, aye. With just the one caveat that I just think, you know, with no disrespect, but this is, I mean, and maybe you're really good at this, but without, it's like, you know, I'm not an attorney, but I'm gonna do a title exam and say, yeah, that's all set. I just, but.
So let's,
So I'm voting yes, but I'm saying the caveat is that it's important that we follow up afterwards to make sure this is followed. And I know that's part of your job, you'll do it. I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me. But
The
anyways.
plans
but-
just have to be acceptable by Andrew.
Yeah, I get it. I'm just saying, yeah. And I'm not saying, I'm just saying that's the one caveat I have, but I'm voting in favor of the project itself.
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't know if it's appropriate to talk about it right now, but I mean, those won't pass for building what we're gonna build there.
Right,
you know,
right.
Obviously, but,
Yeah.
you know.
No, and I know that there's a final piece in place that would prevent this from happening, but it'd be easier if we didn't have to worry about it happening. But anyways, I get it, so.
but we can, let's have this
But I
discussion.
think
So
it
when
was
we get,
part of him, he's not changing the overall look of it.
Right.
He just wants to kind of, it's a
No.
slight expansion of what's already there, so the look isn't really gonna change. And I don't think he really wanted to spend all the money on something if he wasn't guaranteed it going to be, you know,
Yeah.
doing, now that he knows
No.
that he's gonna get it. you
It's
know,
gonna,
get
yeah,
it,
no,
he'll-
I get it, it makes sense, and really,
Sure.
like Andrew, you were always very, you know, always trying to help the people in the public, and that's important as town officials, you know, that we're here to help, not to, you know, hinder, right? I get that, but just somehow, not this one necessarily, this is like a no-brainer, but other things can come back and haunt us if it's not done, that's all. This isn't the case here, but that's it.
I just want to make, so when we write the decision, and then if there's anything other than minor you know, we're going to see it in front of us again, and Andrew's great at bringing that to our
Yeah.
attention, and he knows that
No, and
that's
I know
part of.
the bottom line is he's got the public's, your best interest at heart, do you know what I mean? And the towns, and he does a nice job, you know, combining the two, so that's all.
Okay, so your vote
I'm
was
voting
in favor.
yes for the
and-
third time.
I'm fine with it.
Okay, so we have a
Yes,
vote of 5-0 approving your special permit. So you'll receive follow-up from Nancy and period of a couple weeks or so. And if you have any questions, certainly reach out to the building commissioner. Alrighty? Yeah, I'm sure. So good luck with your project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
One second. Do we have the applicant for 20 Standish Street here this evening? Hello. I'm going to read this into the record. Yes.
In all fairness, when I met them, I think they all had masks on.
We all had masks on. Everybody looks so different.
Right, not a-
I think I look 10 years younger, so I'm in favor of the mask. Okay, so 2174.
Demetra.
Demetra.
Yes.
K. Christakis?
Christakis.
Christakis. The petitioner is seeking a special permit in accordance with 305-10.12 of the Marshfield Municipal Code to construct 2 5-foot by 5-foot 6-inch porches on the front of the dwelling on the property located at 20 Standish Street, which is further identified on the assessor's maps as being on parcel K11-1104 and is located in an R3 zoning district. Alrighty. So why don't you explain the project to us
Sure.
as we get our attachments up on the screen?
So I have a small porch there now. I just want to go out about 5.5 feet on either side so I can have room for a porch swing and a couple chairs because that side of the house gets the afternoon sun and
Okay.
just want a place to sit. That's it.
Any questions from the board?
Is it real? What time No, it should be that much.
Just a second.
Section of it.
That shows what-
So you've got the decks off the front, okay. I don't see anything crazy.
Plans, right?
Pardon?
Those are stamped plans, right?
Yeah. That was from Millbrook.
It's a plot
That's
plan
the
you
pool
would get.
location, for a pool.
Yeah, when I was doing the, putting a pool in, I had that plan done, but it's,
Okay.
nothing's changed since then.
Okay. Any questions from the public? No? All right, we're ready to go to close this, folks?
I'm good. I'm ready.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to close 2174 for 20 Standish Street. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Brian Murphy. All those in favor of closing?
Chris Belazos, aye.
Larry Keane, aye.
Lynn Fiddler, aye.
Steve Feeney, aye.
Brian Murphy, aye.
All right, we're closed. So this as well should have an as-built and an occupancy permit. Is that correct, Andrew? Or where it's in the front, you know, do you need an occupancy
This doesn't
permit?
require an occupancy permit.
Just an as-built?
Our occupancy certificate, just an as-built, yeah.
Okay.
Can you go back to that plan again, John?
All right, I'd like to make a motion to,
I think so.
do we have something we need? Are we good? I'd like to make a motion to grant the special permit. With-
Second.
July
With the
12th.
condition that the applicant provides an as-built prior
Chris-
to occupancy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Brian Murphy. All those in favor?
Chris Belazos, aye.
Larry Keane, aye.
Lynn Fiddler, aye.
Steve Feeney, with the same caveat.
With the same caveat, yeah.
And this plan is almost 10 years old, you know?
Well, they don't go bad.
I know that, Brian. I'm just saying. You could say, if someone just draw it, nothing's changed since, you know, but
She just said that.
I know that. Is she an engineer, Brian? Did you ask her?
That's an engineer's plan, it's a
I get it.
professional
I get it.
land surveyor's
I said
stamp
yes.
plan.
Yeah, it's 10 years old.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah. So
They
just
don't
get an
go
engineer
bad, they
to
don't
say
have a
that.
shelf like it's
But
Well, I
anyway,
do
go
know
ahead.
that some
not like a piece of
towns,
fruit.
some towns do require an updated or a certificate from somebody saying that
Someone
that's
sign it,
that's the
certifies the
case.
same. But it's okay.
That hasn't changed.
It's not a
And they
big
get a certified plot plan when the job's complete.
deal.
Alrighty, so are you in favor?
I'm an aye.
Yeah. I'm in
Yeah, aye,
favor.
okay. All right. So you are all set.
Okay, thank you so much.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have the applicant for 166 Cohasset Avenue? Aye.
176.
2175, 176 Cohasset Avenue.
176.
Did I say that right? Okay.
Yeah, I thought you said the address was 166.
Okay. I'm going to read this into the record, but if you're welcome to sit there or come up. That's okay. You're fine, whatever. This is case 2175, Alexander and Michael Morrison. The petitioners are seeking a special permit in accordance with 305-10.12 of the Marshfield Municipal Code to construct a 15-foot by 24.5-foot two-story addition with a new garage below and a 4-foot, 6-inch by 23-foot one-story addition for new stairs to access the first floor on the property located at 176 Cohasset Avenue, which is further identified on the assessor's maps as being on parcel I-11-13-04 and is located in an R2 zoning district. All righty. So if you'd like to identify yourselves for the record and explain the project?
I'm Dick Rockwood. I did the architectural work for the Morrisons. We are requesting to put in a two-story addition on the front of the house as you approach. I don't know if you have it there in shaded in yellow maybe on the floor plan. Yeah, it doesn't come out, but this is what we're adding on to the house. Yellow just doesn't scan as well. I don't know if I can use a darker color. Yeah, you got it. So we're extending out the garage and adding a living room and readjusting the bedrooms on the second floor.
Calvin?
And adding on the right side a set of stairs that go up to the house. It's pretty difficult now with the grade change. It's all exterior. So now they'll be able to open the door at the bottom level and walk upstairs.
Okay. So does this have town sewerage?
Town sewage? No, we accept it.
Did we receive something from the Board of Health on this?
We did.
This is a 3-bedroom?
The septic was designed for a 3-bedroom. So this, obviously, it's 29 feet, written in by you, right, to the ridge line?
I'm sorry. go ahead.
there's an edit of a red mark on this identifying the elevation as 29 feet to the ridge, right?
Yes, yeah, that would have been, yes,
Okay, so you're wrong.
so it's nowhere near
Yep.
exceeding that in height limit.
Okay, any questions from the board?
I have none. I do not.
No, thank you.
Any questions from the public? Alrighty.
Just, we are in the stormwater overlay district here, so when this, we're gonna have to run this permit past, the DPW engineering, conservation, board of health, they all kind of look at this permit and go through it, so something to take into consideration now would be to address some of the stormwater issues. I'm sure you're aware of what happened above you and affecting your neighbors. And, I'm sure you don't want to be the cause of anything of that on the street or anything like that too. So something to think about right now would be how you're going to handle runoff from the gutters and all that. It's just so that when the building permit does go to that review, it's a quick one.
Is it, you don't have to go to conservation officially, it's a review?
It's a review. Yeah, I send it to the conservation administrator and he reviews it with comments.
Right now, the addition would only take up what's already asphalt.
Correct, right. You just have to have a way to direct the stormwater once it's back, from coming off the roof, catching it and direct.
So our neighbor that built 2 houses down had like the rain collection
Yes.
buckets under the gutters, so that's the type of thing that we're gonna be looking at.
You can do that. They chose to do that as their system. I mean, you could have some sort of drainage system, natural drainage system that you could have the civil engineer or somebody look at. They chose to collect it because he's using it elsewhere on the
Right.
property, but
But
you've
that-
got to
yeah.
have some sort of a plan that gets presented along with your building permit for allowing us to look at.
When it's applied for the building.
When it's applied for the building permit.
Okay.
Yep, that's why I want to make you aware of it now,
Yeah.
so that it's not a big surprise when it comes to it. If you have questions about it, we can sit down and go over it.
Is there a resource to kind of look at options to handle that? It seems like the barrels are one option, maybe
Yeah.
is there I'm sure there's maybe something on the website, I just haven't seen that.
Yeah, a civil engineer is going to be the best option.
Perfect,
If you
okay.
have a site plan guy, you might as
Or
well.
dry wells.
Correct, right.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, all right. So are we okay to close?
I'm good.
Yep.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to close case 2175. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Brian Murphy. All those in favor?
Chris Belazos, aye.
Larry Keane, aye.
Lynn Fiddler, aye.
Brian Murphy, aye.
No caveats.
No caveats. So we are closed. All right. So this particular project stays within the footprint. So would we need an as-built? Yep. And an occupancy permit?
Occupancy, yeah, that certificate, yeah.
Yeah. So those two conditions would be part of this, acknowledging that the board has accepted items 1 through 10 in our zoning codes for the special permit.
Something that should clarify, right? Some folks get confused is the occupancy certificate doesn't mean you have to move out or anything. It's just to certify that once the construction is done, that structural addition is now legally occupiable and safe.
Okay. All right. So I'd like to make a motion to grant the special permit for 176, now it's in my head, 176 Cohasset Avenue with the two conditions that I just outlined. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Brian Murphy. All those in favor?
Aye, Chris Millers.
Larry Keane, aye.
Lynn Fiddler, aye.
Brian Murphy, aye.
Alrighty. So that's a vote of 5-0, and your permit has been granted. So good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Moving right along. So this evening, we have a case that's in front of us for 2163, which is Kathleen Fox and Terrence Power. There's not a lot of us here. You're comfortable sitting there. You certainly can stay there, or you're welcome to come up to the front.
It's probably easier to come there.
Okay. Okay, welcome. I am going to read this into the record.
Okay.
This is case 2163, Kathleen Fox and Terrence Power. Did I read this into the record last time?
Yeah, and then
Let's
we
just-
continued
we'll just
because
do
of
it again.
technical difficulties.
Yeah, we'll just do it again. In accordance with 305-10.09 of the Marshfield Municipal Code, the petitioners are seeking an appeal of the building commissioner's decision not to enforce the landscape buffer and screening conditions included in special permit 15-71 on the property located at 2205 Main Street, which is further identified on the assessor's maps as being on parcel E20-01-03 and is located in an R1 zoning district. In cases like this, I like to go to our building commissioner to have him offer an explanation to the board. And I'd like to do that again in this instance. So, Andrew, if you would like to explain this to the board.
Yeah,
We have the
Just a minute,
letter
ma'am.
up here. I'm just
Okay.
saying if you want to see it.
Okay, thank you.
There was a request for enforcement of the buffer plantings. Unfortunately, I was out of the state at the time all this was happening. So in response to a lot of phone calls and emails, I issued a cease and desist. So I acted on the request for enforcement and issued a cease and desist. Asked the owner to wait until I got back in town to be able to address the situation in person. Once I did get back into town, I researched everything. I went to the site. I felt that there was enough kind of conflict, and it wasn't essentially clear enough for me to make a determination on it, especially since there was a special permit existing. So I then sent another letter and invited the owner to come to the ZBA and have the ZBA decide the issue. And the ZBA decided the issue. And then about a couple months later or so, or a month later, the initial requesters for enforcement requested a letter saying what had been done about it, and I responded, and then they wrote that letter.
Okay. Would you like to explain your side of the story?
Yes. So if you'd like to put the first page of the letter on the screen, so if you have anything that you want to look at while I'm talking about this, I just wrote it out as a statement, so I'd like to read this to you. On April 27th, 2021, I hand-delivered to the Zoning Board office request for enforcement forms from ourselves and two other abutters, Helen Burgess, 18 Littles Lane, and Bob and Joan Chatfield, 5 Littles Lane. It was our understanding that these requests were to be answered within 14 days. However, it took phone calls and emails and took 10 weeks for us to get the letter on July 7th. In the second paragraph of this letter, wait till
We
you
don't
get...
have that statement, correct?
You should have the letter as the first page.
Yeah, but
No, you
that's
don't
what you're
have...
reading.
You don't have what I'm reading. You have the first page of the statement, right there. Thank you. In the second paragraph of his letter, the building commissioner states that without an investigation and an as-built plan as required by Special Permit 1571, a cease and desist order was issued. The planting activity continued contrary to the order. So I want to know why there was no as-built plan available when the special permit called for this work to be completed by June 1st of 2016. And I think it's because that the work was never done. Mr. Stewart states also that it was determined that the previous removal of the vegetation from the buffer zone was not conducted by the owner, and the owner was replacing the buffer as required by the ZBA special permit. How was this determined and by whom? Mr. Rote had not been concerned about meeting the requirements of the permit since 2015. So why now and with trees that don't conform to the requirements of the conditions? First and foremost, the removal of the plantings was done by Mr. Rote, who hired Jeff Morris Engineering to remove the existing 3 large wild roses and 4 younger arborvitae to make a space to build a timber retaining wall and plant these new trees that were already at a height of 16 to 18 feet. These trees now, these younger trees, were 6 feet when Morris Engineering planted those last year. They are now close to 7 and should be subject to the same conditions of the special permit. Second, the circumstances of the removal of vegetation is not relevant to this issue. By his removing the existing buffer, Mr. Rote does not get a free pass to ignore the conditions set by the ZBA. If the entire buffer was destroyed by lightning, the new plants would still need to conform to the conditions of the special permit and the zoning code 305-6.05. Mr. Rote and his attorney are attempting to blame us for his nonconformance. The letter states that an invitation was extended to Mr. Rote to discuss the recent activity, and this discussion was posted on the ZBA agenda under other business. The abutters were not notified, and we only found out the day before the meeting by someone who had been at town hall on other business. Why did you not extend this invitation to the 3 residents who filed for the request for enforcement also? The letter goes on to say that the board took testimony from representatives of Rote Marine and the public. Upon hearing all the testimony and having conducted site visits, the board felt the plantings were consistent with the conditions for case number 1571. Well, this statement is incorrect. The board did not take any testimony from the public until after they gave their consensus that the plantings did not violate the conditions. We were told at that meeting, which was this May 11th, that this was an informal discussion for an opinion only. Then the board gave a consensus, and we received letters with a decision. So this does not sound like an informal opinion. We would like the board to revisit Special Permit 1571 with the 6 conditions that they themselves wrote, and to consult the Marshfield Municipal Zoning Code 305-6.05. We are having a great deal of difficulty understanding how the board feels that these green giants conform to the criteria set by these zoning codes and conditions. We have a presentation of photographs and documentation that we would like to show you tonight and ask the board to reconsider their position. So if you can go to the first photograph, please. Thanks. Right there, that's good, thank you. The day prior to the beginning of this latest work, we were gardening in the area along our driveway, and Jeff Morris told us, the brick drive is our driveway, and Jeff Morris told us what Mr. Rote's plans were. We took photos of the roses and the evergreens before they were removed. Obviously, it was early spring and plantings had not filled in yet. We also have a series of photos showing the work in the buffer over the next several days. There was absolutely no need for Mr. Rote to replace the buffer, as he stated, since these healthy roses were 6 feet tall and provided good screening during the months that the marina is open.
Pardon me, real quick, that's what was initially there, correct?
Yes, before the Green Giants, before they were removed and the Green Giants planted.
Your property ends with those stones,
Yes.
is that correct?
The granite columns, not the granite,
Driveway side of the granite marker is yours, correct?
yes. So you could go to the next page, please. This photograph and the following photograph show the work that is being done. That's the buffer after the roses were removed. And then the next photograph shows the 2 small arborvitae in front of Jeff Morse's truck were later removed, and to the right of those are 2 holes where 2 had already been removed. These are trees that Mr. Rote planted last year, so he was removing them and replacing them with much bigger trees. The letter states, the final paragraph of the letter states that an as-built plan, now you can stay at that, okay, that an as-built plan was submitted to the board, thus completing the final outstanding condition. There are 6 conditions. If you could go to the special page with the special permit condition, which is after these, right, not what I'm reading, right underneath where it says special permit conditions. Thank you. Right there. There are 6 conditions to this special permit. And the first condition, the 6-foot-tall fence behind Helen Burgess's section of the continuous property line, is the only one completed till this as-built was submitted 5 years later. Conditions 2, 3, 4, and 5 describe what the buffer shall be. The wording in these conditions is legally very significant. The word shall is an imperative command indicating that certain actions are mandatory, not optional. It's required. Shall contrast with the word may, which is generally used to indicate a permissive provision and implies some degree of discretion. You can see the 6, I will leave that picture there, and you can see the 6 conditions. These conditions state that existing vegetation may be used. However, a fence or plantings shall be added in areas not currently screened. This shall be done purposefully with a design aesthetic so it looks deliberate and not unintentional. It states that 50% of the plantings are to be evergreen to provide year-round screening. Plantings shall be manicured so they maintain a height similar to the fencing. Now, the only fencing we're talking about is the 6-foot-high fence behind Helen Burgess's property. So, similar to the fencing, 6 feet. The only condition that was completed when we purchased our property in June of 2019 was the first, Helen Burgess's fencing. If you'd like to go to the next picture. This is our home during construction. That is the condition of the buffer when we purchased our home in 2019. This is 3 years after the buffer was supposed to be planted and the as-built submitted. And the very front to the left is our lilac tree, which we affectionately started dubbing the finger of God because it just kept going and going and going. I should say our lilac tree is under that. The next 3 mounds are the roses, and then the 2 other things that are sticking up there are also lilacs. These were totally engulfed by invasive vines. The vines are bittersweet, greenbrier, Virginia creeper, runners from the wild roses, and grapevines that reached 25 feet into our privet tree. All invasive vines, nothing evergreen.
Do you have a picture of that in the cold months of winter?
I don't have it with me, but we probably do in the winter. Do we have pictures of that?
That early spring picture is pretty close to the winter.
Yeah.
Andrew, can we look at this on
Well-
Google Earth?
The picture that I showed you earlier with before the roses were removed, that was April, early April, so things were just beginning to come out at that point.
Forsythia is just blooming.
Yeah, the forsythia was just blooming, so things were coming out. The roses, when it was full springtime, they were very dense and you really couldn't see through them or get through them. The next page is the Marshfield Municipal Code. This deals with the screening and buffers in industrial and business districts when they abut residential property.
Right, we're aware of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
The zoning board granted to Mr. Roth the special permit 1571 in 2015 for relief from the 35-foot buffer required between business and residential properties in the Marshfield Municipal Code 305-6.05. There was no relief given for the other requirements in the zoning code on buffers. The code states that the plantings shall be in the center of the strip. The width of the buffer strip between the marina's paved driveway and the boundary line to our house our property, is 10 feet at the front, which is the closest to Main Street. This is the narrowest area of the buffer. The plantings, therefore, that should be centered 5 feet from the boundary line, not the 2.5 to 3 feet that they are now. The intent of this requirement is to prevent the plantings in the buffer from encroaching on the neighboring property. These trees are currently close to 2 feet into our property and growing. The next photograph, the next page, is the site plan approval. Right there, thank you. On May 20th, 2015, the ZBA approved a site plan, case 14-35A, based on 11 conditions. Conditions 2 and 3 directly relate to the buffer and landscaping. Once again, this landscape plan was never submitted. Mr. Roth was given conditions for the buffer on 2 different special permits. If Mr. Roth had adhered to these conditions in 2016 as required, and the conditions had been enforced, we wouldn't be here today having this discussion. You can go to the next photograph if you want. Right there, my infamous portrait. At the May 11th ZBA meeting, Attorney DeLisi said that the 6-foot height requirement only applied to additional plantings added to the existing vegetation, but not the existing vegetation itself. He is therefore admitting that these new trees are non-conforming because they were added to the existing vegetation, and they were not original, and they are definitely over 6 feet tall. However, I feel this interpretation defies logic. Why would the new plantings be required to be manicured to a height of 6 feet, while the existing vegetation, which was all invasive vines anyway, be allowed to grow uncontrollably? If this is what the ZBA had planned, it would have called out that in the conditions, but it did not. There is no stipulation between a height difference for new or existing plantings. These green giants are currently 16 to 18 feet tall, well over the height similar to the 6-foot fencing. We have a nursery tag identifying these trees taken off a branch that was already extending into our property at the time of planting. The green giant arborvitae tree will reach up to 50 feet in height at maturity, as you can see with these, and have a base diameter between 18 and 20 feet. These trees will have a massive and shallow root system equivalent to the diameter of the trees. The timber retaining wall that Jeff Morris Engineering put in when these trees, Eric's trees were planted, is already leaning. It's being pushed by the roots of these trees. This root system will also undermine our brick-paved driveway, which is only 4 feet from the boundary line. These trees are planted 3 feet or less from the boundary line, so the above-ground growth, as well as the root system, will choke out all of our plantings along that boundary. Apparently, Mr. Rote had not considered the fact that these green giant arborvitae trees will very soon encompass his parking area and a good part of his driveway he uses for food and alcohol deliveries. This driveway is also necessary for emergency vehicles. By planting these trees, Mr. Rote is creating the very 35-foot buffer from which he sought relief with a special permit in November 2015. These are not shrubs. They're trees.
Do you plan on continuing reading to the board?
I have 2 more pages. Yes.
So typically, when we're working with the ZBA, we appreciate the applicant providing their information to the board prior, so that we would have a chance to read what you're saying rather than, and have a chance to work it through our own. So if you would like to provide that piece to the board as an attachment to your record, I'd appreciate it.
Could I finish just the 2 pages that I have?
Also, yes, I'll allow you to continue. However, I will also allow the public the same courtesy and ability to answer questions to the board and to go through the same type of.
We had sent all of this, we had edited a few things, so I changed it. But we had sent all of this for the last meeting, but when it couldn't be shown.
I know, it was an unfortunate.
I know,
things
but
happened,
Nancy
yeah.
did ask if you had copies, if you had seen it, and all of you said that you had not seen it.
Yeah.
So I didn't know it was
Okay.
supposed to be seen
No,
ahead of time.
I appreciate, and luckily this evening, we're not here with a room full of applicants and whatnot, so.
That seems fairly quiet.
Okay, yeah.
What a change. Okay, so these trees were planted, I helped my friend plant these trees in 2014, and they were the same height as me. They were 5 feet tall when we planted them. So.
These are not at the location, correct?
No, I was just trying to give you an example of what they.
I think we're understanding
What they
the
look like,
arguments.
yes. Okay, the next page, okay, that's the plant tag. And there was an as-built plan submitted recently dated May 11th that states 10 12 to 14-foot high green giant were planted. This is not correct, as you can see from the tag. They weren't 12 to 14, which is already double the 6-foot height. They were actually 16 to 18, and that was 5 months ago. The next page is a photograph from our kitchen. This is the view of the green giants taken while seated at our kitchen island. The bottom of these windows are 12.5 feet above the ground and growing. And our land slopes down.
The fact that those plants haven't even reached half of their maturity.
Right, they haven't even reached half, and they certainly haven't filled out at the top.
Do you have a view easement with your property? Do you have a view?
We had a view.
No, do we
an
have a view easement? No, I don't believe we have a view easement.
All right.
However, 6-foot trees would not be
I
a view
understand the
problem.
argument,
Okay.
yes.
We would like to propose an alternate solution to the screening for the buffer area. That should also help block sound, which seems to be Mr. Rote's main concern, and as I think so. This solution should be considerably less expensive in the long run. Once the green giant arborvitae are removed, the 6-foot-high privacy fence that exists behind Helen Burgess's property could be continued easterly along that same common boundary line abutting our property. Fencing would require little maintenance, which is benefit to all parties, since the maintenance has been neglected in the past. The fence should be installed 1 foot inside the property line, as is common practice, so it can be accessed without entering our property or damaging our plants. The new fencing should be 6 feet high, as called for in the conditions. The fencing behind the Burgess property has been sufficient to provide privacy without adding additional plantings. So a fence alone would eliminate the cost of purchasing and installing plants, the need for annual maintenance, and the watering necessary during the very hot summers we've been experiencing. Eliminating the plantings would also open up the area beside the marina driveway to allow for better parking of cars and therefore better access to the driveway. Sometimes it looks like a Chinese fire drill out there with the cars coming and going when these events are going on. The plantings on our side of the property line would add to the privacy screening created by the fence, as well as help to buffer noise from the marina. If Mr. Roach should decide to add plantings at any time, these plantings should comply with the conditions of the special permit. We would benefit, obviously, from this fence by having a more secure and private separation between our property and the marina, and our plantings would not be overgrown by vegetation. These trees, my final page, these trees negatively impact our enjoyment of our home, the use of our property for our own plantings, and they diminish our property value. We can see in this photograph that the trees are well over the required height and width of this buffer, and they were only planted. They will continue to grow to totally block our view and engulf our border plantings. These trees are not in the center of the buffer as required in Section 305-6.05 of the zoning bylaw. These trees exceed the height similar to fencing, which is 6 feet. Clearly, these are the wrong plantings for this location, and they do not comply with the conditions of the special permit or the Marshfield Municipal Zoning Code. We ask the zoning board to correct the situation by ordering these recently planted trees, as well as the younger arborvitae planted last year, to be removed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Len, could we hear from Bob first on this, just because of what he gave us from the last meeting?
Sure. Bob, are you there? I was going to go to,
I just would like to hear his opinion, just because you and I were on the board when we did that decision.
I wasn't a voting member on this particular, but I was part of the vote in,
Yeah.
Can I
This
ask
summer.
something real quick?
Sure.
No, you said the window height is 12 foot there, correct?
The bottom of the windows is 12.5 feet.
So at the 12.5 foot mark, if those trees were at the 12.5 foot mark, they wouldn't be affecting your view, is that correct? That's your kitchen, right?
Right. If,
Looking out, and they were 12.5 feet, that's taking the tops off right there. It's not going to impede your view at that point, correct?
You can't cut them though.
well,
What if whatever vegetation was there was below 12 feet?
Oh, yeah.
yes.
It wouldn't be obstructing your view.
You can't top those, because if you do, they're gonna go out.
Yeah.
And the roots are gonna ache on.
They're already in our property. They're 2 feet into our property now, and they're only 3 feet from the border. So if you try to top them, the reason that's done is to make a thick hedge that gets very, very wide. So it will continue to grow. So we could cut them from our side, but then you're going to have a plant that only has one side, and it's going to go really over into Mr. Rote's property then.
Well, it is difficult having a piece of residential property beside a business property. That's difficult, but for both parties involved.
Sure, we understand that, but that's why when you gave the special permit for that buffer being less than 35 feet, you wrote in those conditions.
Those conditions also considered the 26-foot fencing for Mrs. Burgess, and the idea was that you would fill in between the pieces of fencing with the 6-foot trees. This section was not part of our decision because there was an existing buffer there. Personally, I don't know what happened to the buffer that was there. I heard you say that he got rid of it, you got rid of it. I don't know who removed there was a living green wall there. I know we can look it up on Google Earth.
That was what is referred to as the existing vegetation, but it did clearly say, however, it should be maintained. What's that?
And it's 6 feet.
Yes.
No, but you're talking about the section that we conditioned. No, the new section.
maybe if we go to the
Existing,
site
I was
plan.
on this
I'm
decision.
here, by the way.
All right,
Thanks,
so Bob,
Bob.
we're just looking for an explanation from you. on the decision that we made in 2014, where the buffer was, what is included in the buffer that we were talking about?
Well, my understanding was on that boundary line with the residential properties, there were two sections of buffer. There was a pre-existing buffer relating to the first property on Little's Lane, and then there was a second property where there was no buffer that needed to be supplemented. And the condition of the decision was that secondary home, the one that's the second one in, needed a supplemented buffer. And the plan that was approved by the zoning board in the decision there was a condition explaining what type of a buffer needed to be added and how it was to be maintained, and then it was shown on the plan. There was no condition that related to the buffer next to the first home because there was an existing vegetated buffer there at the time.
So Bob, just to be clear, the way I read it is this applies to 18 Little's Lane. Is that what you're telling us?
If that's the second property in, the answer is yes.
So Bob, the board reviewed this in a Zoom conference, and it was under other business, and
Yes.
I believe we took a vote, like a roll call vote.
You did. I was at that meeting.
So I appreciate the information that's in front of us now, but I am a little bit at a loss on why we're back again for the same issue.
Well, the applicant, I guess, has filed some type of an appeal indicating that they're not satisfied with the decision made by Mr. Stewart. And my understanding is this is some type of an appeal hearing.
Right, but this is nothing in reference to the decision that the board had in, we took
I think that
testimony.
I think there were, at least, I listened to the presentation, and it sounded like the abutters are alleging that they're aggrieved by the failure of the building commissioner to take further enforcement action against Mr. Rout or the business.
Okay.
This is what they're seeking, but that's not what it says.
Do we have any more questions?
Well, I just want to know what happened to the buffer that was there when we did the site visit.
I think we talked about that in a previous.
I remember someone at least suggesting that the property owner there who lives in the first property removed some of the vegetation. And the sense that I had, and my memory could be incorrect, was that Mr. Rout replaced that buffer with trees that he purchased from somewhere else and had them brought in and installed.
Green Giants?
So did you remove any of the existing buffer on
We
his
rem-
property or your property?
We removed vegetation, the invasive vines, from the trees that were killing our forsythia and lilacs and the vegetation on our side. This isn't, Attorney DeLisi was asked a question at the May 11th meeting, and he said that he wasn't going to speak any further on it because it was a potential civil case. So we feel sort of the same way about that. We have to,
But in order to figure out where we are, we have to know what happened to the original buffer. So
well, can I just say this, which I mentioned previous? There's no conditions in the special permit that says if God comes down and strikes your buffer dead, you then don't have to listen to these things. To me, whatever happened to the existing buffer is totally irrelevant to the zoning board's decision on conforming, on maintaining and requiring conformance to the buffer.
And this year, when those Green Giants were put in, Mr. Rout paid Jeff Morse to remove the existing buffer.
So,
Just a
Bob,
second.
can I just hear from Bob that say, what they're saying is this, what is your opinion, Bob, with this God removing, an act of God removing the buffer? It was there when we were there, we did site visits, it was there.
let me explain what I think you have here. You have a pre-existing non-conforming buffer. There wasn't 35-foot buffer when this was being proposed as a use. The board approved a plan showing a lesser buffer, and there were no requests or requirements made by the board to supplement the buffer because the belief was that the existing buffer was adequate. Okay? There wasn't a 35-foot strip because I think there's a roadway there that comes from around the back of the house. That's within 35 feet. There wasn't a 35-foot buffer. So this was a pre-existing non-conforming condition. So, and the board accepted on the plan that was approved the existing buffer. Now, if the abutter altered that buffer, that's not the subject of enforcement action by the town. That's between Mr. Rout and his neighbors to resolve. It has no business involving the town. If Mr. Rout removed the buffer, he's probably obligated to replace it, at least to the extent that it was there before. There was no condition that related to this section of the buffer because what existed there before was deemed to be adequate and it was shown and approved on the plan.
Okay.
Without an as-built plan.
The as-built plan, I think that the abutters are correct. Mr. Rowe did not submit in a timely fashion an as-built plan. And I think to the extent that that condition was still outstanding today, the abutters would have an absolute right to be upset with it. But there was an as-built plan submitted years later than it should have been, but it's been submitted. And therefore there's compliance.
I still have to take issue.
I understand that. I think at this point, I'd like to hear from the other side of the story, unless you have any further questions.
I have nothing other than, Andrew could pull up, I looked at this thing on Google Earth and that green buffer was there.
Right, and it sounds
It
to me
was
that
there
it
when we
wasn't
looked
part
at
of the
it
conditions
originally.
because it wasn't,
But now it's gone, so.
wasn't an issue.
Well, we showed you
So
the
just
pictures.
as-
We showed
but-
you the pictures of those bushes being removed. You saw that.
Yes, just let's turn the tables over right now, and then you'll have a chance to go back. Any questions questions or comments from the public? Yes, please identify yourself for the record.
Okay, great. Attorney Jeff DeLisi, I'm here with Eric Rote. I think there are some procedural issues and some substantive issues, and initially I was going to comment on the procedural ones. Actually, let me just comment on that briefly. There was apparently a letter or some kind of request for enforcement. Andrew wrote a cease and desist letter. He then rescinded that cease and desist letter in a writing, invited Mr. Rote to appear before the ZBA. Mr. Rote appeared before the ZBA, and at that hearing, the petitioners were present. And at that hearing, very specifically, there was a reference to the fact that Andrew rescinded his cease and desist and found that there was no violation. So at that time, the petitioners were on notice that there was action by Andrew denying the request for enforcement. They would have had 30 days to file an appeal from then, and they didn't do it. So I
And
think,
what was the date?
We did.
no.
So just a second, just a second.
That was May 17th, or May 11th was the hearing. So there would have been a 30-day time frame from May 11th within which they would have had to have filed an appeal with the ZBA because they were on actual notice that the request for enforcement was denied based on the fact that they were in the meeting and it was discussed. So there's a jurisdictional question there. As far as the substance is concerned, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors about the pre-existing vegetation, right? What was the pre-existing vegetation? Was it what Mr. Rote removed earlier this year, or was it what was removed prior to that? So thankfully, we have photos from the time in 2015 of the existing vegetation in the area we're talking about. And here are the photos. You can actually see the small little window up there in the middle. That's the house of the petitioners.
Can we keep this for the record?
Yeah, keep all three of them.
Okay, thank you.
That is your home? On the window?
Yes.
That's what existed in 2015. I view this hearing.
Excuse me, folks, could you mute yourself, please, if you're not speaking? Thank you. Thanks, appreciate it.
I view this hearing as essentially an attempt to get a view easement, because Mr. Rote didn't knock those trees down. Somebody came in onto his property without authorization and removed them. Mr. Rote then planted the young arborvitaes that are referenced by the petitioners and rose bushes, I believe, which were then removed by Mr. Rote this year and switched, because they were failing, to what was planted this year. So I think it's very important to get the facts straight about what occurred. This is an attempt to get a view easement in a land use restriction. Bob has indicated that that decision, the special permit from 2015, really was addressing 18 Little's Lane, and it makes sense, because when you look at the zoning bylaw says is that you can get a special permit to fill in gaps with a fence augmented by low plantings. That was done for the area of 18 Little's Lane. And if you even look at the plain language of the decision from 2015, this talks about 18 Little's Lane in number 1. In number 2, it says, the applicant shall install a fence or add plantings to any area not currently screened from view and allow a width of 5 feet. So in this particular case, the area that we're talking about was screened from view. And so how would you like it if somebody went on your property, cut down your trees, and then told you you couldn't plant any additional trees? Because that's what happened here. So I don't see that there's any jurisdiction to actually even consider this appeal. But even if there were, substantively, there's a good reason to deny it. It is, let's see here. I just wanted to point out that the zoning bylaw that we're talking about, the provision of the zoning bylaw, references maintenance of buffer strips at the time of occupancy. So this would have been necessary in 2015. In addition to that, in addition to that, the actual, is this the, so this is the,
This was provided by the,
That's a municipal, Marshfield
That's our
Municipal
bylaw,
Code.
305, 605.
Yep.
okay, so this is, we're just cut off over here. There's an A, a B, and a C.
mm-hmm,
So B talks about the circumstance when you need to get a special permit over here. So it basically says a solid wall or fence not to exceed 6 feet in height, complemented by suitable plantings, may be substituted for such landscape buffer strip by special permit. So that's what happened. there was a special permit request to substitute the buffer strip in an area where it was not adequate, and to do it with a fence, which is referenced in the first condition of the special permit. So I don't see how there's any jurisdiction. I think that the board has already determined this issue twice now, and I see no reason for the board to have any jurisdiction over whatever Mr. Roth decides to do with respect to landscaping on his property.
Real quick, that photo there, that doesn't extend out to the roadway, correct? That's not all the way out to the end? That's like at the back corner of their home? Like this
No,
is
that
this is the
went
back
out,
end,
that went
correct?
out all the way.
That went all the way to the street where that is currently, okay.
Would you like a
Yeah,
chance
go
to,
ahead.
I mean,
have you seen these?
If
No,
I
I've
could-
seen those
If I could just say
photographs.
something to put it in simple terms, you know, they moved in next door, they dropped at least 5 trees. Some of them have diameter bases in the 14-inch area range.
Sir, he sat there quietly, so you just need to do the same.
You know, that's the fact. You know, you can see the photos, how thick it was. It was a 35-foot wall. You could only see the third-story little window sticking out, and that's the reason that it was determined by the zoning board at the time to allow that buffer to stay. Everybody there was living there at the time, the previous owners, everybody agreed, that's perfect. It screens view, it screens sound, it screens everything. And then, you know, they moved in and they dropped the trees. My trees that were part of my buffer zone, and I'm just looking to replace them, and I did, and you know, there's no view easement. They created a view where there wasn't a view, and now they're not happy that I'm putting it back, but it is what it is.
Can I address these?
Just a
Stay-
second.
Can you see if,
Just a
does
second.
Mrs. Burgess have anything to say?
Yes.
Yes, I'm Helen Burgess, 18 Little Lane. The fence is behind my house, the fence is fine. I just have a couple of questions. I'm just interested in asking Mr. Stewart, how long after something is built do you usually get an as-built plan?
I guess it depends on whether there's an active building permit for it. They're closing out a building permit, so that's a different situation than something like this. With something like this, I believe they would usually put a caveat, the time or special permit is good for, I think, 2 years.
2 years.
So
So it
usually
would be
within
3
2
years and that Mr. Rowe would
Yep.
have time to put the as-built plan
Sure.
after it's built?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Second question is, in response to Mr. Galvin's comment that this only affected my property, how is it that a buffer zone on a commercial or business property would only extend part of the way on that property? Because there's my property and then there's the petitioner's property. And I'm just wondering if there are other examples around town where conditions just only apply to one of several abutters, for instance,
Well,
the driveway or something. I'm
Since
just
I was
wondering-
on that decision, I can tell you that what happened is, we did several site visits.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a pre-existing non-conforming use.
Right. Well, the whole thing's
That-
pre-existing. not
Correct.
conforming.
The whole property is. So, but that use was there, that buffer existed. So what we had to do was we had to take care of your part of the buffer. And that's, we agreed to do
That's
all.
all you had to take care of.
It's clearly in there, 26 feet is what we did. And then that meant that if there was some, I remember the discussion, because if we had run into some trees on your, we would end the fence and then use the existing trees in between, or fill them in with trees. And that was the whole idea of that buffer, was to protect your property. And I know because I sat on it.
I think also, ma'am, that the question is what the permit says. And I think that's part of what Mr. Galvin was addressing, was what is the actual permit saying, what does it apply to?
Well, it doesn't exactly clear in the conditions that.
No, I don't think so either.
applies to.
Well, the buffer's now missing, so it's
I-
being
Buffer's
replaced.
what?
The buffer's missing in that front section that used to be there.
It was removed.
Okay.
Clearly, you have two photos here.
There.
One of the house under construction.
Yes.
With that buffer there.
Right.
And that's a totally different.
Yes.
That's what.
And this
the
is
time
what-
Of the permitting for the business, that's what was there.
And this is what I would like to address with
And
you,
that's what's on,
answering these questions.
yeah.
Yes.
So that's, again, not being on the board at that time, I'm looking at, this is your home when you were
Right,
doing construction to it, and that's the buffer I see.
yes.
That's the buffer that was at the time of permit.
Those
And the
pictures are from
difference-
2014, 2015.
Yes, the difference is, Mr. Road is correct, we did take down trees, but he keeps saying that they were his trees, and they're not. The stumps are still there, you're welcome to come look at them. They are on our side of the boundary. Our property. We had every right to remove those trees.
That's why it looks
So that's why it looks much fuller, is because all of that vegetation was growing up in those trees that we removed. There was also a section that we had a shed was on the property, and we sold the shed, removed that after we moved in. And where the shed was, there was no sunlight, so there was no vegetation growing behind it. So there was a very open section, fairly similar to where those smaller arborvitae were, that there was nothing growing because the shed had blocked the view there.
Okay,
But my real question is, oh, and let me just be clear that we were told we had 30 days to file an appeal from the receipt of the letter, because we had not received a definite letter of the conditions that Andrew sent to us. So we were waiting to get, that's why I kept calling and finding out, we were waiting to get the decision letter. So, because until then, we had nothing to appeal. So we got the decision letter and we appealed, and we did appeal within 30 days.
so Attorney DeLisi, you were referencing the jurisdictional timeline. Where are you going, what dates are you going from? They seem to be different than this applicant.
Right, so, just to be
I mean, if we're at the point where this is
Yep.
null and void, then we're,
Right, so.
Why don't we ask
Spinning our
Bob, we'll get
wheels.
Bob's opinion. Bob, if you wouldn't mind, is this a civil matter, and did they file on time?
Well, my understanding is that there was a written decision by Andrew Stewart indicating that he was not going to take enforcement action. And if this appeal was filed within 30 days of that date, then it's a timely appeal. I don't subscribe to the theory by Attorney DeLisi that because they attended the May hearing, they're time barred. Okay, I think it's 30 days from the date that Andrew Stewart says, I'm going to take enforcement action or I'm not going to take enforcement action.
so that's July 6th letter, is that correct, Andrew?
Yeah.
If it's that date, then,
They're timely.
then they're timely.
Okay.
Okay?
I just want to
I don't-
clear-
I just have, I respectfully disagree with Bob on that issue, but I think I spoke to the substance enough, and I think Bob also spoke to
Right,
the substance as well. So,
okay.
the way if you look at Andrew's letter from July, he basically explained what had previously occurred. It was an explanation of what occurred. It wasn't, a denial. It was basically, it was already denied.
Well, if you want to speak to
What
that,
he said, and
I can ask you.
we could split hairs. That's my position. That's what we do as lawyers.
Yep.
But Bob, so is this a civil matter, or is this, what do we have here?
If they have another issue involving trees, it is purely a civil matter. There is no zoning enforcement issue that I can see at this particular time.
The key thing to understand here is that Mr. Root did not remove the vegetation that appears in the 3 photos that I sent. So whether that vegetation was on his property or not, he didn't remove it. And litigation will determine whether there was a trespass or not.
Can I just also go back to the conditions of the special permit?
I think we've been
And-
through that.
Well, we have,
multiple
but
times.
I...
He omitted the height
it-
requirement.
It does not say that these conditions only apply to 18 Little's Lane. If you are setting conditions for a buffer, there's a 35-foot buffer required between residential and business property. Our property is residential, Mr. Rhodes' business. The property line that the fence runs along of Helen's property is one continuous line all the way to Main Street with Mr. Rhodes' property on the other side. So why would you, if you're looking for a 35, or a relief from a 35-foot buffer, why would that only apply to her property and not ours?
Because that
We
is the
shouldn't-
only area that was not vegetated.
But
I
it
think
doesn't
we've already
say that
That
in
is in
here.
the decision. And Bob, is that
But
what
you
we
did
said
not-
in our decision?
But you did
And
not write that in this
It says
decision.
26 feet clearly
You
in the
may
decision.
remember that, but it's not
It
written
says
in this
26 feet
decision.
in the decision.
For the fence.
Correct.
But it doesn't say anything about the rest. It says existing vegetation can be used however, and it talks about everything that you need to have in that buffer. 50% should be screened.
Ma'am, so at this point, we're at it, you've given us a lot of information. I don't want to get in a position where the board debates you. So you have presented the board with your information. We have another member of the public here as well as presented the board with information.
Bob
So-
Chatfield would like to speak also.
So I will, at this point, ask the board how they feel and where we're going to proceed at this point.
Okay.
So if you would just sit tight for a second and let's see where we're going with this. Folks, so right now, I'd like to.
Mr. Chatfield.
Mr. Chatfield's
Absolutely, but I don't want to get in a debate with the public and back and forth, and I think that that's, sometimes it's productive,
I
but
think what
this
Bob
evening.
said is clear. There's no zoning violation.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
there?
Sure.
Both these properties look wonderful. You've both done a great job. They look really good. I don't think this board's here to kind of negotiate between the two of you. It appears what was done at the original, if the owners of your property back then had participated in it and said, you know, can we keep this at this height? Should have been addressed then. It clearly to me was not.
They didn't care.
That's unfortunate, but it's nowhere here that area was addressed to be kept at 6 foot.
Actually, I think that fourth condition says it
Sure.
all.
Yeah,
A height requirement, 6 foot similar to the fencing, that was omitted over here, but that's really the crux of it all.
I get it, but again, both properties look great. You've done a good job with them. I would hope that this is something that even, no matter what this board does, that you guys can work this out between you.
The whole thing is, it's just totally unnecessary.
Okay.
Totally unnecessary.
Well, it is difficult running a business, a successful business, beside a residential piece of property. Mr. Rowe wants to be busy, he's gonna, as you said, it's gonna look like a mess in his parking lot. That means a successful business, he's doing good business. In turn, might be intrusive to you, but you did buy a residential property beside an airport. Planes are gonna fly over. So I would hope that the two of you would be able to kind of work this out as neighbors. Don't put the board in position to have to work it out for you. It's unfortunate, the two photos that were presented tonight are night and day from what was there when Mr. Rowe did this project to the photos of what you presented to us. It clearly some large
Because-
trees.
Several
disappeared.
trees
Because
were
we
missing.
cut our
We got
trees
cut them
down.
There's a tree across the street that actually
Sure.
fell over
Yep.
recently.
Yeah, oh, I get it, but
No, I
they're
mean,
clearly gone.
things
They were
change.
there when this project was approved. There were 30-foot trees there.
Yeah, and they got removed.
Now they're
And
not.
And they were on our property, not his.
That's a civil matter. I don't see as that being.
And we're
Right,
not,
I'm
we're
just
not
trying to
arguing,
explain.
No, I-
we're not arguing that.
Here, Mr. Chatfield?
So I'm going to ask the public, and hopefully we can finish up this evening. So is there another member of the public that would like to speak? Mr. Chatfield?
Can you hear me?
I can. Welcome.
Okay. First First of all, I'd just like to say, it's too bad everyone didn't have an opportunity to, over the last year or two, watch Terry and Kathy change that property into a showplace as opposed to a little bit of a dump. And the amount of effort that they put into that has been tremendous. I've had a little experience with arborvitaes and their growth. 5 years ago, my wife and I planted 6 of them by the edge of our yard. They grow about 5 feet a year. And so those 5.5 years ago, those plants were planted. They're now over 20 feet tall. And they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're blocking traffic. They're blocking the sight of the highway from our house. That picture that was taken from the kitchen of Kathy and Terry, you look at that and say, well, gee, what's the problem? That's a beautiful view. I want to suggest that about a year, maybe 2 years from now, there will be no view because those trees will be above the kitchen level and will be totally blocked off. I think what's most concerning is the base growth of those trees. The little trees that we planted 5 years ago are now about 5 feet out into our yard, which is fine because we're not doing anything there. But Kathy and Terry have gardened all along there, and if nothing else, the branches of the trees are going to be infringing in their yard, and they already have, as a matter of fact, and they've just been there a few months. What's I hadn't thought of before, but another thing to consider is the roots and the damage they might do, and what happens and who's responsible if those roots come over and damage not only their garden but their driveway and other aspects of the house. So it's not so much what's happening right now as much as what's going to be happening in the future.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Mrs. Burgess has another question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, with all due respect, I was at the meeting when the previous owners were also there, and Mr. Rote was discussing his, options for trees. And I remember that we all said that the existing vegetation was fine because we were basically afraid of having 60-foot trees in front of our houses. So I think it's not quite right to say that the previous owners did not have any input to that.
Thank you. Alrighty, I think we're at the point where we can close this hearing. Is the board in favor of
I'm
doing
good.
so?
I just would, once again, if Bob has advised us of what he said, I think we're ready to close.
What was that, Brian? Sorry?
With what Bob has advised us, I think we're ready to close.
Right.
Did you need me again?
Well, no, I'm just saying with what you've advised us, you said there's no zoning violation here, correct?
No, not in my opinion. We've looked at the issue back and forth, and I've discussed it with Mr. Stewart before. I discussed it with him before he wrote his July 6th letter, and it looked like to me that the applicant had satisfied the conditions that were outstanding, which was namely the failure to submit the as-built plan. And because he had done that, there were no remaining conditions. We specifically considered that buffer zone issue. And that buffer had on the original plan an existing buffer that the board back in 2014-15 approved. And the area that had no buffer was required to be buffered. And the conditions that relating to that area to be buffered were set forth in the decision.
Thank you.
All right, very good, thank you. All right, I'd like to make a motion to close case 2163. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Brian Murphy. All those in favor of closing?
Aye, Chris Belazos.
Larry Keane, aye.
Lynn Fiddler, aye.
Steve Feeney, aye.
Brian Murphy, aye.
Brian Murphy, aye. So this hearing is now closed to the public. And does the board feel we would like to deliberate or wait till another date?
I'm good.
Comfortable?
I'm good to go.
I'm ready to deliberate.
Well, I know how
Yeah.
you're listening to town council, and I have as well. So I was a little bit concerned with the jurisdictional dotting the i's, crossing the t's, but I'm going to accept this as a timely filing. I would like to say to the applicant here this evening that I'm sure this has been a stressful time for you, and I can imagine that buying the house, doing the improvements and all of this has been a challenge. So I'm hoping, and I'm very hopeful that in the future that you'll be able to work things out with your neighbors and have a successful outcome. However, at this point, I would like to request the board to affirm the decision of Andrew and affirm that his judgment was correct, and move forward with that. Would anybody else like to have something else to say?
Real quick, again, both your properties look great. You did, as the audience said, you did a wonderful job in your house, no question about it. Your windowsill's 12 foot tall. I would hope that maybe you can work something out with your neighbor, that maybe kept it a 12-foot height. But again, the two parties need to work together. I don't see this as the board's decision. I would just hope that both parties, you live beside each other, you work beside each other. I hope it's something you can work out without litigation, but that's between you guys. You know, 12 foot high is your windowsill, you showed it there. I just hope you'll be able to work it out.
Right. So it was.
And do we have to say we're denying the appeal also, or just
Yes,
affirming Andrew?
we're going to affirm his decision and deny the appeal, acknowledging that the zoning enforcement issue, there is none at this time as far as the board is concerned. So I'd like to make a motion in that regard, and do I have a second?
Second?
Seconded by Brian Murphy. All those in favor?
Then, just as you said, absolutely, I think the thing is timely filed. The clock starts when the decision is written and received, not at some oral statement at a hearing. So one, it's timely filed, I agree with you there. Secondly, there's lots of room for compromise here, and I would hope that you folks could do that. The plan you presented doesn't sound like a bad idea if you can work it out between you, but it's not on our plate. So, based on what was written in 2015 in pretty clear language, I would vote to affirm Andrew's denial.
I agree.
And I agree.
I agree as well.
I agree.
So we are moving forward with that with a vote of 5-0.
Unbelievable.
Okay. All right. Good luck, folks. I hope
Thank
it
you.
works out.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
So here we are, and
Interesting to see that 30-foot.
Town of Marshfield Harbor Master, Webster Point Village. All right. Anything else we need to go over? We
Close.
Folks, are you all set? MCTV, are you okay? We're gonna,
I was just,
thank
one
you.
of our neighbors was trying to tune into Marshfield TV to watch the.
Oh, there's a link that you can gain access. Oh, this
It's not
evening?
live from Marshall TV, just on Zoom.
Sometimes
just
we
Zoom.
are, sometimes we
Just
are
Zoom.
not.
Okay, I just wondered, because I
Tonight.
don't know, because I don't watch TV.
Yeah, tonight, but there'll probably be a link in a week or so that they could click on and watch. Very good.
Listen to TV, I don't watch it.
Have a nice night. Anything else the board like to discuss?
Nope.
Okay, I'd like to make a,
Oh,
do we have something?
Something I did. It's kind of a moot point now, but I'm only required to send written notification if I decline to act. And in this case, I felt like I acted, you know? I notified them, I got both parties to the ZBA. I didn't feel like I declined to act. In that case, I wasn't required to write them a letter. They requested I write them a letter, and I did, and that's what they appealed, was after the decisions were made.
Right.
You know, I didn't want to, you know, like.
I didn't see anything
press
tonight
that
to-
point, but, you know, you know, I think it should be noted that the ZBA understand that I'm only required to write a letter if I decline to act, and I have to state my refusal, why I refuse to act on their.
And you have that in the book right there,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So,
Right.
I don't think anybody had any issue with your
No,
performance at all.
and
It's
the
just,
whole
it-
thing,
I know
my
I
whole thing
don't.
was
It's just-
to bring it to the board, you know,
Sure.
like, because it was a special permit decision,
Yeah.
and it was an interpretation, I felt it was relevant, it was for the board to bring the
Right.
That's it.
Well, it's just, I'm hopeful they'll work it out. But, yeah.
Which brings
Very
eternal.
unfortunate.
Motion to,
Motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Brian Murphy.
Aye, Chris Belazos.
Larry Keane, aye.
Lynn Fiddler, aye.
Brian Murphy, aye.
Thank you. Thank you, MCTV.
Good comment.